John Rothman, you have written a book that very much speaks to Iran, the complexities. You studied this region. You've lectured on this region. Would it be too much trouble for you to hang up the phones while we're talking?
They've been ringing off the hook.
All right. Let me please start again. John Rothman, you are a scholar who've studied the Middle East for many years. You've written a book on same. I wonder if you can give me a state of the state, and then I'll ask you to comment on some of the remarks of political leaders in this country. Go ahead.
Happy to do it. First thing is, we should be grateful that the Grand Ayatollah is gone. Nobody supported the Grand Ayatollah except the Islamic Republic itself. But we have a bigger problem now, and that is this is an expanding war. As you know, Iran can only call colossal miscalculation, has attacked fellow Muslim countries. Now, you wanted me to define something, and I will do it. Iran is a Shiite nation. The rest of the Middle East is Sunni. So what you're seeing is a conflict between Sunni and Shia. But fundamentally, what you have is a president of the United States who has a perfect right to move the military wherever he chooses to do. He is not required to ask for a declaration of war. We haven't had a declaration of war in this country since December of 1941. But the president of the United States, when it comes to this, has absolute authority. And let me be clear. The War Powers Act was authored by Senator Tom Eagleton initially. And I had Tom Eagleton on my program quite frequently. Tom Eagleton, in the end, voted against his own War Powers resolution because he said what's being passed is an expansion of presidential power. So there is no check on the president when it comes to what's happening in Iran. Congress can pass all the resolutions it wants. There's only one thing that checks a president. We saw it in the Vietnam War when Gerald Ford could not get the money from the Congress to save South Vietnam. And we are not going to see a Congress ever vote to reduce funds when American military is present in a theater. So
there'll be the requirement of additional funds, most certainly in this theater of conflict, John. We're running out of munitions. We're running out of money.
But he's going to move it. Now, by the way, you heard the White House sort of imply that the reason we have a munitions problem is because of Ukraine. It's another absurd statement by this White House. You also heard the president and Marco Rubio going at each other in a way. Marco Rubio saying, we went into this because of Israel. The president saying quite the contrary. And the simple truth is this president has decided to make his mark by defeating the Iranian mullahs. And that's it.
I want to start then with give me cut one, Tony, which is a conversation with the foreign minister from Iran who speaks to the fact that, hey, we were in negotiations and all of a sudden, this stuff happens. And he essentially says, when asked, might there be a way to negotiate a peace at this point? I think you'll hear him in a second sort of say, I don't know, we were in negotiations and all of a sudden you guys open fire. Now you want us to negotiate again for a peace that, again, can we trust it or can't we? Go ahead.
Out through intermediaries to ask to resume talks.
Do you think any Iranian with common sense would be really in a position to reach out to the United States under these circumstances? We were negotiating with the United States. In just 9 months, in the course of less than 1 year, we were betrayed. Diplomacy was betrayed. We were negotiating with the US negotiators. In June, we were supposed to meet for the 6th round in Muscat. And just 2 days before that, the United States and Israel attacked Iran. Right now, we negotiated in all good faith, in all seriousness in Geneva. And please, I refer you to the words of Omani foreign minister. He is a neutral, impartial mediator. He said that we had significant progress. And then he suggested to both delegations that let's talk in Vienna on technical details of a possible deal. And we both agreed. And again, on 28 February, just one day after that, the American and Israelis attacked Iran. And look what Rubio said. He said that we entered this war on behalf of Israel. So they contradicted themselves, because they first said we had to push against an imminent threat from Iran. That's a big lie. And then Pentagon themselves, they said that there was no imminent threat from Iran. There was no intention on the part of Iran to attack the United States. And please go to the history of Iran for the past 100 years. Have we ever attacked any neighboring country? No. We have only defended ourselves, being during 1980s against Saddam, dictator of Iraq, who was equipped by some Western countries, including the United States, with chemical weapons, or against Daesh terrorists after they attacked our cities inside Iran. During the June attack, again, we had to use our missile system in defense of our people. So every responsible state, every responsible government is both entitled and duty-bound to defend its citizens.
So, but you got a couple things there. Obviously, the June attack was the bombing to take out the nuclear site. The other thing is they play themselves in that moment as, innocents here, when the reality is, of course, they have been the sponsors of terrorism across the region without question. But it is also true that there were ongoing negotiations, John, and it seems as though the Americans weren't negotiating in good faith.
See, I would disagree. There is no negotiation with the Iranian mullahs. They've never kept their word. There are no negotiations that have worked with them ever. And frankly, we know that. Didn't we have an Iran nuclear deal that Obama made? Yes, and they violated. So
that was negotiated, wasn't it?
No, but they violated it. They were continuing their nuclear development. We all know that. The IAEA affirmed that. But I don't want to get distracted here. We are now in a war. It is a war that was created by Donald Trump in order to achieve a diplomatic statement. We are now embroiled in a massive war. And I want to be clear about something. Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense. There is no War Department, no matter how often Marco Rubio says it. But this is an administration completely out of control, with no logical bearings. And this president cannot be stopped. I want people to understand, in foreign policy, the president cannot be stopped. He is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And I know somebody out there is going to yell at me and say, well, John, it says Congress has to declare war. We have not had a declared war by this Congress, by a Congress, since December of 1941. All of our actions, including Korea and Vietnam, were taken unilaterally. And even the action in Venezuela, let me point out, where you had a walkover situation, there was no way to restrain that at all. None. And so this is the simple reality of the world in which we live. It makes us pause to consider what it means now in the presidency of the United States, because the person who is president is pulling the strings and giving the orders. You played a piece about Kristi Noem that I heard earlier. Can you imagine somebody so incompetent, so arrogant, so out of touch, being secretary of what is called Homeland Security? She creates insecurity. Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, it's nonsense. But remember, I want
you to hear a little bit of Elizabeth Warren, who came out of the classified briefing talking about this. This is cut 12, Tony. Elizabeth Warren coming out of a classified briefing and sharing this.
I just left a classified briefing on Iran, and here's what I can say. It is so much worse than you thought. You are right to be worried. Trump administration has no plan in Iran. This illegal war is based on lies, and it was launched without any imminent threat to our nation. Donald Trump still hasn't given a single clear reason for this war, and he seems to have no plan for how to end it either. Like a lot of you, I am really angry. I am angry at what Donald Trump is doing, And I feel grief for those already killed in this unnecessary conflict. And I will keep doing everything I can to fight to end this war.
So I also want
There's
you to.
nothing she can do to end the war. Do
Well-
you understand? Congress is virtually impotent.
Well, why are they taking a vote on it then, John? Is it just pro?
Because to get people on the record, that is the whole point of this vote, as Tim Kaine has said. They don't expect it to have any impact at all. The only way you can restrain a president in this kind of situation is what Congress did to Gerald Ford. Don't appropriate the money. And let me remind you that Spiro Agnew and Richard Nixon both said, had they been in the White House, they would have gone ahead regardless.
Here is Mark Kelly, who also expressed the similar sentiments as to where we are in this thing and who's running the railroad.
Leading Iran are now rising up to lead it again.
Yeah, they don't have a plan. I don't think there was a strategic goal here. And they're flailing around. So no goal, no timeline. What that leads to is just more U.S. service members in a really, really challenging spot. You got to, I think one thing that I don't think has been really mentioned here much is how this president considers and his regard for U.S. service members. I mean, over the last 10 years, he said a lot of things that makes me believe that he doesn't have the kind of respect that typical presidents have of members of the military and the challenges that they face. The Iranian people, they're in a tough spot. I mean, this is not an armed opposition. This isn't like 1979 when there were millions of people, in the streets here. It's much smaller. It's much less coordinated to the extent that anything like this is coordinated. I want to see the Iranian people certainly rise up and replace this regime. And it's a good thing that the Ayatollah is gone, right? But, I mean, at this point, how do they do that? And 3 weeks ago, the IRGC murdered 30,000 Iranians. So this is going to be a challenging thing. I think by this point, the administration thought that this would all be over and there'd be a new government. Not that easy.
I think that's exactly right, John Rothman, that
I
he,
agree.
again, coming off the high with the bounce in his step after Venezuela, after essentially getting through a bunch of targeted military conflicts, including the one in June with Israel and the attack on that nuclear
It's the
facility.
arrogance
He
of
felt
power.
like he could make this happen and make it happen quickly.
No, he can't. It's the arrogance of power. I have a very good friend, actually my son's friend. His family is all in Tehran. They absolutely oppose the mullahs. They're thrilled at the death of the Grand Ayatollah. And they have no alternative. There is no democratic tradition that exists in Iran. And now, I've interviewed Reza Pahlavi, the Shah's son, twice. He is not an alternative. And you will see as this develops, he's become a rallying point because there is no alternative to the mullahs. And let me tell you, you are absolutely right. There is no plan, no timeline for this war in Iran. And when the president says it could go on for 5 weeks or longer, he's absolutely right. The Iranians are going to resist. Let me say a word about sleeper cells.
Well, before you get to that, just on the succession thing, let me just note this. The powerful son of Iran's slain supreme leader now emerging today as a front runner to succeed him.
Yeah.
This, of course, as there have been stepped-up military campaigns against Tehran, and NATO air defenses destroyed a missile headed from Iran to where, John?
Turkey.
To Turkey. Exactly. This is a far bigger effort involving many more places and NATO countries than perhaps Donald
And
Trump
you
had
heard what
originally
happened.
conceived.
They were meeting to select a new Grand Ayatollah, and the Americans and the Israelis hit that target. We don't know who survived and who didn't. And the point is that anyone who was elected by the mullahs to lead Iran is going to be targeted and killed. By the way, let me remind everyone, it was under Gerald Ford. I keep hearing all this misinformation. It was under Gerald Ford that the president of the United States issued an order that we could not and would not assassinate any foreign leaders. that executive order is gone. And let me tell you, when you kill someone like the Grand Ayatollah, if you think that the mullahs are going to sit back quietly and do nothing, or that Iranians who are religious fanatics are going to do nothing, and if you understand, we talked earlier about the Shiites, if you understand precisely what the Shiites want and what they're moving toward, you understand this is just the beginning, and I don't say it lightly. I am in favor of what happened to the Grand Ayatollah. I am no fan of what Iran has done, but I listened to the White House briefing this morning, and by the way, to call the White House press secretary a press secretary is absolute rubbish. She's not a press secretary, and it was absolutely shocking this morning as she went back all the way to 1979 and the hostages to try to justify what is happening now.
Well, Trump himself has done that same kind of wayback machine. Now, let me ask you about what you brought up, which is the sleeper cells in this country. Go ahead. Give me a word on that.
There is a question. We don't know. And do you know that Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, fired just this last week the people who were doing the Iranian analysis, or 2 weeks ago. And who's doing the analysis now? This is nuts. And we don't know the nature of sleeper cells. I can tell you the Europeans understand this clearly, and we should have learned the lesson from September the 11th. Remember, the hijackers trained not only abroad, but in this country. They went to the appropriate schools to learn how to fly planes. This is something that this country is completely unprepared for. And let me tell you something, that this will be a tragic commentary. One other quick point. There is no way Iran can defeat the United States. You understand, our military power is so overwhelming, and the president is using that power in an overwhelming fashion. But I want, again, to be crystal clear. When we look at what we are doing, there is no concrete plan by this administration. Whatever nonsense comes out of the White House, and there is reaction taking place around the world. But you know, this is going to be every moment, Mark. I am listening to the news. I'm getting calls. I received, when I found out that the Grand Ayatollah was dead, it was from an inside source in Israel, several hours before it was reported in this country. And you know, this is something that
you have contacts, which is one of the reasons I was looking forward to talking to you. You have contacts in the region that really put you close to everything going on. I want to just put a fine point on what you were talking about when you talk about sleeper cells, because Kash Patel fired that crew that was monitoring threats from Iran, those domestic threats, a dozen agents and staff members from this counterintelligence unit. This just happened.
And Kristi Noem did the same thing in Homeland Security.
So, I mean, you've really hamstrung the ability of the U.S. to keep track of this stuff when you start firing people who are experts in everything from the language, which is very, very important, to the institutional culture of sleeper cells associated with Iran. And so, you know, here we are, again, flying blind with utter incompetence running the story.
Because I know we have limited time, I understand that, unfortunately, Mark keeps me on a very tight leash. But I want to be clear.
We started this conversation by John saying, I want you to know I have a hard out. I have a hard out at the top of the hour, okay? Hard out. All right.
Good. Because so much is going on, but I'd never miss the Mark Thompson program, ever.
Thank you, sir.
Ever. But I want people really to appreciate the danger that exists and the fact that this now is extending, as you just heard, of an Iranian missile heading toward Turkey, that we have unrest in Middle East capitals, that we have American embassies and consulates under siege, that we have a constant barrage. It's just something that we need to understand very clearly is happening in the world today and creates a real problem. Now, I want one more thing.
Okay.
Congress is not going to step in. So we are really at the mercy of whatever Donald Trump and his administration plan.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
What I want to challenge you on is this notion that, please understand, there's no way the Americans can possibly lose in this situation. They're overwhelming in terms of their power. Yes and no. The reality is that the Americans are in a grappling match now that I don't know they anticipated, meaning they are having to take out these, and this has been so reported on by now that I'm sure everybody's familiar with it. You know, they're taking out these $20,000 drones with $1 million missiles. And the reality is you can't keep that up for 5, 6, 7 weeks without running out of missiles.
I don't disagree with you at all. We agree completely. But what I'm telling you is that American military has such overwhelming might that Iran has no chance in terms of a response. They can do little pinpricks and they can hit maybe successfully on one way or the other, but there is no way that American might can be challenged.
Well,
Now,
I don't know what can be challenged means, but the reality is that, as I've just told you, American might can be diminished. You can run out of munitions.
I agree.
You can be hobbled by Iran. I understand.
I agree.
It's the old thing. I may lose the fight, but the other guy, I'm gonna F him up before it's all over.
I agree, and that's exactly what Iran is going to try to do. You're exactly correct, on point.
Wow, I really like going out with that.
You can go out with me anytime.
Yes, I want to touch on one other thing with Rothman here in my last couple of minutes, and that's And next hour, I'll get into MAGA and the falling apart of those coalitions as a result of this, et cetera. I've got stuff from Megyn Kelly and all that. But I want to talk about, again, the planning here. Because, again, you have the weekend host of Fox and Friends running the Pentagon. You have Marco Rubio. I don't know how involved he was with any of this. And you've fired most of the State Department. I mean, a lot of the State Department hallways are empty in Washington because they fired so many people.
And the FBI.
Thank Elon Musk and Doge and the FBI, et cetera. But now I'm getting to, so as a result of all of that, the planning associated with getting Americans out has clearly been non-existent. Here's cut 11 on now having to realize, as the U.S. government has, run by these people I talk about, that we got to at least try to get Americans out of harm's way. Here is Jonathan Carr.
Rubio urged news organizations to put the 24/7 State Department emergency line out so that Americans who are stuck in the Middle East can get help getting out of the region, register their names and not. But listen to what happens when you dial the number.
Please do not rely on the U.S. government for assisted departure or evacuation at this time. There are currently no United States evacuation points. Please continue to check the embassy's website for updated information.
So,
in the event of ongoing...
The bottom line is, if you're looking for help, you're stuck in the Middle East and you can't evacuate, there's no help yet from the United States government. You can call that number, you can go through the website, you can register your name so you might get updates later. But the number that the Secretary of State gave out, what it does for you is it tells you right now that there is no help from the United States government in getting out of the Middle East.
The coherence that you should have associated with getting Americans out was present in another war that was horrible. And you may remember it, the Iraq War, when Bush went in. And he shouldn't have gone in. And I said it vociferously. The guy had no business with the Iraq invasion and all of the mess that followed. But the one thing that Bush and Cheney did, those, in my view, despicable political figures, They had a mechanism in place to get Americans out. This crew has no mechanism in place to get Americans out. They have to ask Jonathan Karl at ABC and the other networks, please get this out to your people, this phone number, this 800 number that people will call. And then when they call it, that's the recording they get.
Okay, I have to tell you, while you were preparing for your show, and I was listening to your prep, but I was listening to the press conference as well, because some of us can multitask. What I want you to be aware of is the White House press secretary began by blasting Jonathan Karl and the media for replaying that and saying, well, if you go on now, we are making provisions for departures. But you're absolutely right, Mark. There was no advanced planning. Now, did it mean that they thought that once the Grand Ayatollah was decapitated, that the Iranian system would collapse? Which, of course, was nonsense. This is not the Shah. This is something very different. And I would remind you, the Shah was told that if you want to survive, you'll have to use our guns, American guns, against your people. And the Shah refused to do it. He loved his people. Whatever you think of the Shah, whatever how horrible he was, Savak and all the rest, these mullahs are prepared to mow down their people without a second thought.
But
And
I think your first point is a real important one, which is this isn't simply by decapitating the top dog, the end of the Iranian regime by any means. I've just told you, his son is poised to move into that position. And so the superstructure that is Iran continues.
And if it were not his son, there would be backup, because no one who is designated the leader is going to be safe, Mark. The Israeli intelligence and American intelligence are out to eliminate these people without any hesitation or doubt. By the way, if a foreign government would do that to our government, can you imagine the outrage that would take place?
We have some of that press conference, but I know you got to get out of here. Do you want to watch some of it, or do you have to run? We'll watch it without you.
Yeah, you watch it without me. But look, I just want people to know this week is going to be a very important week on a variety of levels. We haven't talked about the election that took place in Texas.
Well, I would, but you've got a hard out.
I know. What can I do? And I know you always
don't tell me everything we didn't talk about. How dare you?
You always
do
you know who I am?
I don't know. I can't. You come in here with your little agenda, and then when I interrupt you to try to move you to another thing, people in the comments go, "How come you always interrupt him? My God, you always interrupt him."
I love it when you're angry.
All right, listen, John Rothman. You can
Thank
find
God
him on
your listeners are really listening, Mark.
Around the Political World with John Rothman is his podcast. It's a daily dose of his madness. You can find him here once a week on Wednesdays. John Rothman, we love you. Stay in touch.
Before I do the hard out, I just want you to know that I appreciated the warm birthday wishes, which came from Kim and you and everyone, and I'm really delighted.
Happy birthday, John Rothman.
We adore you. Yes. It's
all right. I apologize. Duty calls, but I will be listening, Mark, and I want to thank you again. Everybody subscribe and contribute to the Mark Thompson program.
Oh, thank you, John. Bye-bye, John Rothman. Happy birthday.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.